Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us on this last edition of Inside Africa for the week. Nelson Mandela's grandson Mandla has accused his relatives of being vengeful and seeking to control the former South African president's legacy. His comments came as the bodies of three of Mandela's children were being reburied at the anti-apartheid icon's home village of Kunu. Police on Wednesday exhumed the bodies from Mandela's homestead after court action by his relatives.
The man at the centre of a bitter family feud. Nelson Mandela is not dead yet, but already his grandson, Mandla, is fighting other members of the extended Mandela family for control of his grave. Today, the bodies of three of Mr. Mandela's children were reburied in the village where Nelson Mandela grew up. Their remains were exhumed after a court ruled that Mandla Mandela had moved the bodies to a gravesite on his own estate nearby 2 years ago without proper consultation. Mandla, the eldest grandson and head of the Mandela clan, said this was nothing short of an attempt to usurp him as Nelson Mandela's rightful heir.
At the moment, it seems like anyone and everyone can come and say, I am a Mandela, and demand to be part of a decision-making in this family.
Nelson Mandela has said he wants to be buried at his home next to his children. Home is Kunu, where he grew up. But it was in nearby Mvezo that he was born, and where Mandla has been creating a shrine to the anti-apartheid leader. Mr. Mandela's wife, who's been constantly at his side, made a rare and personal public statement about his condition.
Although Madiba sometimes may be uncomfortable, very few times he is in pain, but he is fine. I think the best gift which he has given to this nation again is the gift of unity.
As well-wishers continue to gather outside the hospital in Pretoria, this Mandela family feud has, for many, been an uncomfortable spectacle.
Still in South Africa, the country's most popular meat could become significantly more expensive. The Trade Commission is expected to decide this week whether to increase import tariffs on chicken.
South Africans eat more chicken than any other type of meat because it's the least expensive. But farmers say cheap imports from Brazil and Europe are killing their industry.
It's impacted on the prices that we can get for our products, the depth of distribution that we would like to have achieved, and more importantly, it's affected our profitability.
The country's Poultry Association wants tariffs on imports increased by up to 80%, the maximum allowed by the World Trade Organization. But importers are warning higher tariffs will mean people will have to pay more for their favourite meat. Many shoppers told us they prefer the taste of imported chicken, but the thought of what could be a 50% price hike upsets many people.
It would mean less food in my house, poverty. Because we always want chicken. But if it goes up, we're going to starve. We won't eat any meat.
People are signing a petition against price rises in their thousands. But the Poultry Association says it's time developing countries stood up for themselves.
I think that it's a common cause that nothing in life is fair, so why should trade be fair? I do think, though, that public perception can put pressure on those who currently take advantage of the system to those who are being abused, and it's primarily the developing countries who get the short end of the stick.
While the International Trade Commission of South Africa debates the tariffs and how to balance jobs against higher prices, South Africans are braced to rebalance their budgets too. Tanya Page, Al Jazeera, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Now, it is important for Africa to effectively prevent and control emerging and established biotic threats to agriculture. A ban on many foods from Africa by major international markets has increased the need for action. The Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, and its partners in the agriculture sector are therefore putting in place strategies to act soonest. This call was made at a 3-day brainstorming conference on strategies for prevention and containing emerging diseases and pests in Africa.
Threats are responsible for at least 30% annual reduction in crop losses around the world, and the impact is especially felt in sub-Saharan Africa because there are several diseases and insect pests that destroy greens, tubers and fruits. New and established diseases such as cassava mosaic, banana bunch top, and papaya mealing-bug are some of the new diseases and insect pests that are ruining crop production and productivity and spreading from country to country and region to region at an alarming rate, turning into epidemics and pandemics. Efforts to control these problems are fragmented, with actions limited to some regions, allowing the epidemic to continue. In addition, poor adoption of control measures, limited capacity for early and accurate detection, and inadequate regulatory and management measures across Africa are some of the factors preventing an end to the problems. The Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, therefore convened the 3-day session to pool ideas to effectively protect and control organisms destroying the farms. A biotechnology and biosafety program manager of the West and Central African Council for Agricultural Research and Development, Professor Abdurrahman Sangari, said it is important for the continent to cooperate in this regard, because majority of these organisms are by their nature quarantine pests and must not be dealt with in isolation. These are his recommendations.
Formalize the Alliance for the Control of Emerging Plant Pests and Diseases Threats to Food and Horticultural Crops in Africa. Heighten awareness creation on impact of pests and diseases on agricultural production, food security, livelihoods, and export trade, as well as on value of preventive measures.
The consensus after deliberations is for African countries to improve their communication and information sharing. This will encourage effective control of diseases and pests to improve fruit production, successful exports, and the generation of the needed revenue.
We are still in Ghana, and now 4 people died when the boat they were traveling on from Gonzaga to Dambai Market capsized on the Oti River. The boat, which had 25 passengers on board, was said to have hit a tree stump in the river near a village called Ike, a few kilometers from Dambai.
Within the Karachi East district of the Volta region, river transport is the major means of commuting from one town to the other. On Mondays and Tuesdays, the Oti River bustles with activity when the people go to the Dambai market to sell their wares. Boat owners therefore take advantage of the large numbers to overload. This sometimes results in accidents on the Oti River. In this particular instance, the boat was said to be carrying 25 passengers. The victims were on their way to the Dambai market to transact business. According to the district police commander at Dambai, Superintendent Jordan Quay, the 4 died because the passengers were not wearing life jackets.
The canoe grazed the stump in the Oti River and water gushed in. That made it gain weight and then started sinking, and really it did.
The Karachi East District Chief Executive, Raphael Kofi Ojemoko, was not happy that commuters on the Oti River were not in the habit of wearing life jackets.
Because they don't have access road. That is why they are compelled to travel on the lake. So why can't we open some access road to them? As I speak to you, we've opened Adakonu Airamo. We've also opened Cement Airamo. The people don't just want to use the road.
Away from Ghana, in the meantime, insurgencies across Nigeria threatening the security of life and property have continued to generate concerns. Experts at the 4th National Civil Military Dialogue are emphatic that rapid measures must be taken through a civil military dialogue to accelerate the return to lasting peace.
The issue of national security, experts have agreed, is critical to the survival of any nation. But insurgencies across the country is posing a great threat to this assumption. They say inequality, injustice, and socio-political elements which have greatly contributed to this is depriving the nation of a secure environment. They are of the opinion that for Nigeria to enjoy an environment free from kidnappings, killings, and other related social vices, it must employ the use of a civil military dialogue.
To bring the synergy of the civil and the military together so that they can forge ahead to be able to stop whatever anomalies are in the society, especially regarding insurgency, terrorism, criminality, kidnapping.
They, however, argue that the potency of this synergy will benefit Nigerians if the use of intelligence is adopted, with citizens actively participating in the drive towards ensuring a more secure society.
The neighbors and the friends can give the information to the security agency. For instance, you can see the people are taking the solution in their hand. They are having civilian JTF in places like Borno, because people are woken up and they are saying now we have to take the destiny in our hand.
Identifying these strategies, stakeholders also recommend an active 911 system, which they say will adequately safeguard the lives and properties of Nigerians, with a call for spirit of nationalism and core societal values.
Let's now take you to Kenya, where 14 people were killed in Kitui County by a gang of more than 30 attackers armed with guns and crude weapons, and believed to be headed by an ex-convict recently released from the Committee Maximum Prison in a retaliatory attack. Angry residents of Mono and Nyanya villages in Mwingi Central killed 3 of the attackers, bringing to 17 the number of deaths.
12-year-old Makau Musyoki is lucky to be alive, but heartbroken and traumatized. He helplessly had what would sadly be the last memories of his parents. The wails and groans of his mother and father as the more than 30 attackers hacked them to death. He was watching from this granary where he hid till morning. His parents among 12 people from Muono and Nyanya villages in Kitui County, attacked by a gang of unknown number of men.
Alikuwa naona hiyo toshi. Sasa akakaa agulala. Kwa watu wakaenda. Ndiye kulivo vambazuka akashuka chini. Akakuta wazazi wake wamekufa.
Nilisikia tu mlio. Kuna kitu ilibigwa kama bunduki nikiwa kwa nyumba.
The attack happened at midnight and with the nearest police station over 30 kilometers away at 2 a.m. Thursday. The men in the 2 villages trailed the attackers, who were armed with guns and other crude weapons. 3 were killed by the irate villagers at around 6 a.m. and they discovered that one of them was an ex-convict.
Hiyo yeye ametenda mambo mingi area hii. Kuua watu, kuiba. Si ati ni mtu mgeni kwa hiyo jambo. Lakini akipelekwa huko anarudi tu.
According to locals here, the leader of the gang is said to be a jailbird who has been in and out of jail for murder and robbery with violence. But even after killing his brother and neighbor in Muono over a land dispute, the reason why he killed a businessman at the neighboring village of Nyanya remains a mystery. But what Makau saw and heard from his hideout could explain why.
Akawa haoni vizuri, lakini akasikia watu wakisema tuliambiwa hapa kuna milioni moja tunataka.
There is an investigation going on right now on the same to establish the real cause.
Bringing you more news from Kenya, the government is set to employ an extra 12,000 nurses in response to the influx of expectant mothers visiting delivery clinics as a result of free maternal services. Health Cabinet Secretary James Macharia said that this is just the first phase in the government efforts to facilitate the rollout of free maternity services in public hospitals. Macharia, however, noted that the state of several public hospitals will also need improvements to cater for expectant mothers.
We really need to begin to change our own mentality and to begin to understand that, we're supposed to provide service to the people.
President Uhuru Kenyatta's announcement that all fees on maternity health services in public hospitals be waived came as a relief to many mothers. However, it was an announcement that faced criticism, with many arguing the free services may be of no benefit to mothers who cannot access health centers with adequate trained personnel and adequate equipment. However, the announcement has increased the numbers of mothers seeking maternal health services in public hospitals to almost double. And the challenge now is how the existing personnel is dealing with these numbers. Now the Ministry of Health says the President's promise will be fulfilled to the latter. The ministry will recruit over 12,000 nurses to respond to the high numbers of mothers accessing the free services.
The government has put aside the budget in 2013-2014 of 3.6 billion shillings to employ new nurses and new health workers. So with those additional almost 12,000 workers, I think the problem will somehow be mitigated.
The Health Cabinet Secretary says this is just the beginning and that the ministry is fully committed to the promise made by the Jubilee government after the general elections.
The government of Kenya is committed to ensuring access to universal health care for all Kenyans as enshrined in our constitution.
In addition to the employment of the nurses, the Cabinet Secretary said the state of majority public hospitals must be improved, as many of them lack essential and basic equipment to attend to expectant mothers. Angel Katose, KTN, live at 1.
In other news, the word independent earthquake reporting site earthquake report has defined tremors in parts of Uganda Wednesday as very dangerous. The heaviest tremors heavy tremors felt late Wednesday evening was recorded at 5.7 magnitude on the Richter scale. This was the second quake in 2 days. Experts predicted the region will experience more tremors.
In recent years, Uganda has experienced many natural disasters, from floods to landslides. There have been earth tremors, but of such small magnitudes that they have often been given no special attention. Last evening's tremors, however, raised some concern, and social media was awake with many sharing their experiences.
When you see things shaking in the building, then you know that's an earthquake, it's not a tremor. Those activities deep inside the earth are not yet over.
An earthquake, also known as a quake or tremor, is the result of the movement of plates within the Earth's crust. The Earth as a whole is made up of plate-like structures which keep moving. This movement releases energy which causes an earthquake anywhere in the world.
These earthquakes have not occurred recently. They always occur.
The Lake Albertine region was the epicenter of the most recent tremors. The U.S. Geological Survey places the epicenter of Wednesday's quake in Lake Albert. Tremors were felt in Kampala, Kagadi, Hoima and Bunia in the DRC. Areas in the Rift Valley and volcanic areas are prone to earthquakes. The head of the Geography Department at Makerere University, Dr. Frederick Tumwine, says a big part of Uganda is geologically unstable, especially the western areas where there is oil. And this raises a question that has been on many minds, whether or not the oil drilling in Hoima had anything to do with the recent quakes.
That one is just a hearsay. It's not scientific at all.
You cannot drill up to the extent of destabilizing, the tectonic plates.
Experts say Uganda will see more and more earthquakes in the future. But it is hard to determine with earthquakes. There can be stability for a long period, and then an earthquake occurs suddenly. Still, there are some prior warnings.
Especially in those areas where the activity takes place, For example, you find that where the epicenter was, if you ask the people around there, you'll discover that things like snakes all of a sudden became so many because they sense these things and they come out.
Now is the time to plan better before earthquakes of larger magnitudes hit.
You build buildings using a quack buzz. Then what do you expect? The houses are going to crumble more than the way they have been doing.
If you want an earthquake-proof building, one of the things you need to ensure is that the columns and the beams are well tied. For framed buildings, those are story buildings.
At the start of an earthquake, if you are in a storied building, your best bet is to run out. If you cannot get out easily, look for a table, a bed, or something strong enough to hide under. Earthquakes do aggravate natural disasters. After an earthquake takes place, the area affected is made unstable, and in cases of mountains, if the mountain had a crack, an earthquake expands it. The worst earthquake Uganda has seen was the 1966 Toro earthquake that lasted 3 to 5 minutes and left over 100 people dead.
And now 6 people abducted by the Lord's Resistance Army rebels over a decade ago have been reunited with their families in Gulu district. The young men who have been undergoing rehabilitation at an NGO in Gulu narrated their ordeal in the hands of the rebels to their relatives in Divera village.
David Ojara is a 29-year-old man who was abducted by LRA rebels from his village in Gulu at the tender age of 11. He's been living at this rehabilitation center after being rescued by UPDF troops from the Central African Republic in March this year. Ojara is one of those formerly abducted persons who were lucky to have returned home alive. Many of his colleagues were killed in captivity, and some, like this man, returned maimed. Ojara's relatives gave up hope of ever seeing him alive, and some had even considered holding last funeral rites in his honor.
And I told the family that my brother is back, but they could not believe. The day when he reached the rehabilitation center here, I came here myself that day because they called me. I gave him to talk to the mom, the sisters, the auntie, and they felt so excited about his coming back.
World Vision Uganda estimates that up to 66,000 children were abducted in northern Uganda by the rebels during the 20-year conflict in the region. The International Criminal Court in 2005 issued arrest warrants to Joseph Kony and 4 of his commanders for committing war crimes and crimes against humanity. The LRA rebels are believed to be operating in the jungles of the Central African Republic.
And that's the package we put together for you this day on the program. Thanks for watching and have a pleasant weekend in the company of programs on Afrique Media.